Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dustin Thompson with the Delaware Sierra Club, and with me is David Murray. So David, your company employs or represents a large list of solar companies, some pretty big names that I was surprised to see. Can you give us a little overview of what your organization does and who they represent
Sure.
that you're allowed to talk about?
Happy to. So we're MDVCIA, the Maryland, DC, Delaware, Virginia Solar Energy Industries Association. For those that work in energy, you probably know that we love our acronyms, and so we have quite a long one. We are the official solar trade association for installers, developers, financiers, lawyers, you name it, that work in the Mid-Atlantic. We were founded in 1984 by a group of plumbers who said, you know, this solar thermal technology is really interesting, and we should really move forward with it. Well, now we represent some of the companies that are building huge solar farms in Virginia. I don't think anyone could have predicted the growth of the solar industry, especially in the last decade. We represent about, of course I'd be getting a phone call right now. We represent about 150 companies that do business in the area. As I mentioned, some of your big names like Vivint, Sunrun, Tesla, Cypress Creek, to your companies that are such as a father and son that are working out of Fredericksburg. So really a diverse group of folks that we represent.
Great, thank you. So just to jump right into it, so given that the impact that China has felt and the fact that in 2018, 60% of the world's solar panels were made there, how is the solar industry kind of dealing with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure, and as you all know, the virus sort of started out in China in the Wuhan province, which is a particularly industrial part of the country. Folks often compare it to Chicago and really being the backbone of the country's manufacturing sector. And one of the reasons why solar has become so cheap in the last decade is because China really prioritized manufacturing solar efficiently and cheaply. And that's allowed us to take advantage of cheap solar panels that down the cost of renewable energy for everyone. And so when COVID had an impact on China, they took it very seriously and shut down a lot of manufacturing. Because they shut that down, a number of our companies that had pre-ordered panels were impacted by that. They were told they had to wait. It's good news to see that a lot of these manufacturers have reopened up. At the same time, a lot of the production is automated. So most of the jobs in solar, particularly in the US, are done through installation. For instance, I'd say about 80% of solar jobs in the US are installers. And of course, we manufacture panels here in the US too for solar. Out in Ohio was able to keep their manufacturer's facility open throughout COVID-19. And so furthermore, a number of installers, like the folks that put solar on your roof, have sort of stockpiles of panels in an instance like a supply chain shock like this. So while China's getting back to normal, our economy is slowing down. So I think that the biggest impacts to the industry here are really going to be in sales. Folks are pretty uncertain whether or not they want to spend the money on solar panels right now, but also on permitting and inspection. Of course, I can get into that in a little bit, Dustin.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on a few things actually that I wanted to talk about. So you had talked about a lot of the sales, or sorry, a lot of the jobs in the U.S. is in installations. So I assume that, you know, there's not a large sector of solar jobs that are, you know, uh, essential positions that are still working. So is the industry in the U.S. then taking a large hit because of all the lockdown orders and things of that nature? I mean, are people still doing repairs and things like that, or is it pretty much at a standstill?
So interestingly, we are essential workers, or at least
Okay.
most of us are. But nonetheless, the residential solar sector is being hit the hardest here. And that's for a few reasons. One is that um, the sales, a lot of those are door to door. A lot of solar sales is done over the kitchen table. You have someone come into your home, they look
Yeah.
at your roof, they look at your meter, they talk to you about your energy needs and what you hope to get out of an install. And when you can't do that in person, it's really hard to to make that case. And so a number of our companies have pivoted towards virtual consultations like this one to try to see if they can still do sales. But also they're relying on drones or FaceTime and say, hey, can you put me on FaceTime and show me your electrical box? And that way they can still move forward business as usual. But again, because of the financial shock, things have really slowed down. So a lot of our folks, you know, companies like CMI Electric, local to Delaware, are really relying on their commercial projects to keep their workers employed. So a lot of the commercial solar project construction can be done at a safe distance. It's pretty easy to social distance when you're several yards away from someone on a roof. Um, and furthermore, you need companies like Sunrun. They're testing their employees before they go into work every day. They make sure they stay appropriately distanced. Nonetheless, three-quarters of our companies are furloughing employees right now. And the reason I use furlough is because they really want to retain good people, especially before COVID hit. A lot of them were having trouble hiring just because they were growing faster than they could find people for. And so they're trying to make sure that folks can work, you know, 20, 25 hours a week and still hold on to their job and get a paycheck in these challenging times.
Yeah, you had a graphic that you had shared with me that really kind of, I think, brought it home a little bit that I want to put up so everybody could see at home. Can we see that? I believe so. So I think this kind of highlights a little bit of what you're talking about in terms of just how many people are impacted in which way.
Yeah, and you can see, so this was a survey done by the National Solar Trade Association, and of the companies that they've been interviewing, they represent about 3,500 solar workers, and 62 or 6,200 already laid off or furloughed. Double that is on reduced worker pay. And so it really affects every state that the solar industry operates in. Again, the benefit, what's really keeping us afloat right now is the fact that most states' executive orders, and in our region, Delaware included, have solar as an essential service, and that's because we're considered energy services and energy generation, which is fundamental to keeping the lights on. But also roofers, electricians, those are all essential workers too. And so obviously we want to be careful about that and make sure that our workers are still following CDC and OSHA guidelines. The National Association put out guidance for installers on sort of best practices they can use. But we are still continuing. But again, just less than 15% of solar companies are reporting business as usual. So you know, we're fortunate we're still being able to keep going, but it's not where we were a couple of months ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, and kind of on that, you know, some people are talking about what it looks like on the other side. We have a group of states on the West Coast, group of states on the East Coast that's kind of examining, how we can recover from this and how we come back from it, both from a medical and an economic through those lenses. So what does recovery kind of look like for the solar industry? Is there a bounce back that is predicted on the other side of this, or is it going to be an ongoing process?
Yeah. Well, I have good news and bad news. And I think good news for folks that are part of the Sierra Club. We work with you all in each of our states. We're going to bounce back a lot faster than the fossil fuels. And there have been a number of articles detailing why we can do that. And one of those is that we are able to quickly get back on roofs, get back, requesting permits to do installs, rather than, say, the oil industry, where you have ports paying people to take oil off their hands, and they're sort of at the mercy of global commodity prices and vulnerable to price shocks. We know the sun is going to keep shining tomorrow. What the oil industry doesn't know, what the gas industry doesn't know, is what those commodity prices are going to look like a couple months out. And so we actually, when we try to think of silver linings in this scenario, one of them is that not only have we reduced our emissions, but also we've really seen what energy sectors are resilient. And for us, we really see this as another speed bump. Of course, no one can predict what's going to happen in the next month, 3 months, 6 months. And so we are really sort of a lot of what the industry is relying on right now is access to financing. And so tax equity is something a lot of our folks are concerned about. As many of you know, the investment tax credit allows you to take 26% of the solar installation off of your tax liability. And for these larger companies that rely on tax equity to get these projects done, there's some uncertainty there. So again, if the economy recovers fast, we're going to try to recover quickly with it. The solar industry has really been kicked hard in the last few years because this administration has put tariffs on solar panels. They put tariffs on aluminum. They did not extend the investment tax credit, but nonetheless, we've been resilient, and so we're confident we can do the same during this pandemic. But I think a lot of it will really be contingent upon access to financing and how comfortable folks are about making that investment.
Yeah. So on the topic of how the federal response is unfolding, has the solar industry received any financial assistance through any of the pandemic response bills that you're aware of?
So there's a few mechanisms in the CARES Act that are as beneficial for our installers: paycheck protection, emergency assistance that a number of small businesses are using. But unfortunately, it did not make it. You probably heard Senator Mitch McConnell call out the solar industry for trying to get on the floor. So the good news is it's the advocacy that solar installers, that environmental groups like Sierra Club are doing is having an impact on the halls of Congress. But there has not been a relief package targeted at solar. And again, we don't know what the next administration is. We don't know what Congress will look like in 2021. So we're hoping that the new administration in 2021 have better ways to support the industry. But right now, businesses are relying on paycheck protection and unemployment benefits that companies.
Yeah, you're starting to cut out a little bit. I can see the signal on your end has dropped down a little bit, but I think I think we caught the vast majority of that. Um, just so everybody knows, if we do end up losing David, he has a call-in number that he can give us a ring on and jump right back on. I have another question. So speaking of kind of on the other side of this, on the consumer side, though, there is going to be probably a bit of hesitation and uncertainty about the marketplace and the economic situation and how people are going to kind of put everything back together. As far as solar, um, in reducing energy bills and kind of bringing a little bit more security, how can people get into solar, have it installed on their house, or invest in it some way through, having Delmarva purchase their energy through solar, however they want to go about it? What are the ways that people can get into solar without the capital and financial security that maybe they had before COVID?
Sure, that's a great question. So there are a number of ways you can put solar on your roof with no money down. You can either do a loan or a power purchase agreement, meaning an installer will put solar on your roof and you will pay them for the electricity that those panels generate at the rate that you are paying today for the next 25 years, meaning you lock in your electricity prices over the long term. And this is just one way that people can save money with solar. They can go green without even putting any money down. And so that's a great way for someone who doesn't necessarily want to buy the system outright. About 45% of homeowners last year used a power purchase agreement to go solar. So there's a lot of options that folks use that allows you to go solar with no money down. And again, there's also community solar. We actually tried to get that done in Delaware last year, but were unsuccessful. We might, on where session is going, we might have another bite at the apple down the road. But community solar, which is available in Maryland and Delaware, in Maryland and the District of Columbia, allows someone like me who doesn't own their own roof, you live in an apartment, you're a renter, to basically invest in a share of solar panels, and you pay for that solar electricity that's coming from a farm a few miles away, a solar farm a few miles away, and you save money at the same time. So you can really take advantage of the economics of a large ground-mounted system, but see the benefit of it playing out in your own home and on your electricity bill.
Yeah, we have been working here diligently at the Delaware Sierra Club to try and get the RPS bill and community solar provision and a few other things through. But of course, without the legislature being in session, it's a hard task to do. And then even when they come back, of course, they're going to be inundated with the needs of the current pandemic. But we're hopeful. And so fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to you all as the Sierra Club, as activists, folks that are spending time walking the halls of Dover and calling your state senator to talk to them about the RPS and why it's important, not just for the environment but for jobs. The RPS has had a measurable impact across the country on the states that it's active in, and Delaware's is really outdated. So over the last 3 years, MDVC has been able to significantly increase the RPS in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. Your support to make that happen, because there's a lot of local solar jobs on the table. And a lot of opportunity for businesses and homeowners to go solar as a result.
Yeah, particularly if we can get the community solar legislation passed, that can be a great, it can have a good impact in communities across Delaware, and there was even provisions in looking at how it's going to specifically benefit low-income communities and how to bring the solar technology into those areas where energy stability, utility cost stability, particularly and security is essential. So if anybody doesn't have any questions, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to drop them in the chat, or you could raise your hand. If you click on participants, you should be able to see the gestures by your name that allow you to kind of raise your hand, and you can speak as well. So if anybody has anything, go ahead and drop that in the chat now. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, David, for jumping on. We pretty much on schedule here. My computer's glitching out. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit. So sounds like we may be wrapping up.
Yes. Not sure why I'm cutting out. I have my computer actually plugged into the wall, but so here is a question from Sherry, and then I have one from John. So John asks where are the prices currently for solar installations?
So if I were John, I would look into it now, and that's because again, solar companies are looking for new sales opportunities. And so we have a directory on MDVC's website for companies that maybe it's about $2.80 up to about $3 per watt, meaning you can get a solar array on your roof for about $20,000. And that's pretty much the cheapest it's been historically. So now is the time to consider investing in one.
Question from Sherry is, could you speak, or no, that's from T. We'll go back to that in a second. Is the solar industry concerned at all with the other state RPS increases, which are including non-traditional renewable energy?
So there has been a trend towards, as the solar industry and the wind industry grows, and particularly the offshore grows, there has been a trend to kick out other sort of renewable, but we'll call them pure forms of energy, like municipal solid waste or waste product. And so, we obviously would support something where it makes where competition is really just among the so-called true renewables. Often for political reasons, it is very difficult to kick some of those resources out of eligibility. It turns out that if you've been around your state capital for decades, got a bit of political capital, and so we often see those fights play out during session. I believe Delaware's renewable portfolio standard mostly comes from wind RECs, so it's doing fairly well. Whereas in Maryland, there's still subsidies for municipal solid waste and wood waste, and there have been an increasing number of attempts to kick those out.
Yeah.
And then I see T's question there.
Yep.
Yeah, I will actually link to the solar industry's best practices for during COVID. There is great guidance that they've put out that folks are expected to follow that relates to how you're supposed to social distance, how employers should be making sure that their workers are treated safely, and companies like Sunrun have sort of their own standards that they're putting out there, but we're trying to make sure that if folks are going to be still working, that they not only that they're doing their part to reduce the spread of the pandemic, in keeping boat owners and their workers safe.
Great. So I am going to wrap it up just because we only have about 5 minutes here, and I wanted to take just a couple minutes to shamelessly plug some of the things that Sierra Club is working on right now. So we do have this live stream series weekly during the month of April. Our next one is going to be actually on Monday next week. We're going to be talking about offshore wind potential in Delaware. I'm going to put the RSVP link into the chat for everybody there, and it will be up on our Facebook and website tomorrow morning. The other thing that we're doing is a Earth Day live celebration for anybody and everybody to join that. We're going to have a few speakers talking about different topics. We have somebody who literally wrote the book on the history of Earth Day, which is much more, it's a much deeper topic than one would think. And there was a lot happening behind the scenes. And so he's going to help share and highlight some of those things. And then we have somebody talking about transportation and climate change and how we can help drive that force for transition. And we're going to have somebody talking about environmental, racial, and social justice and what we can all do as a part of that fight as well. So that's going to be next Wednesday from 1:30 to 3:30. There will be plenty of time for some person-to-person interaction. We'll have little breakout groups where people can reflect with one another and talk with one another and socialize a little bit in this time of social distancing. And so you're welcome to join that as well. Again, that is going to be, you can find that on our Facebook page, of course, and I'm also going to drop the link for that. And so once again, I wanted to thank you, David, for taking this time out and for all you're doing for the solar industry and everybody that is relying on you for their representation. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dustin. And thank you to the Sierra Club for all the great advocacy y'all have been doing and will be doing around clean energy and climate. State policy could not be more important at this time. And so really appreciate this opportunity and thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody tuning in on the Zoom and everybody on Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now. Thank you very much.